or thought that was ambitious, to say the least. But actually what's gone on to happen is that Leeds, in a season where there has been one stellar dominant side throughout the regular season, underneath that were the more consistent of the inconsistent teams and got results.
I don't think they were inconsistent. You're right, yeah.
Do you know what I mean? They were in a season where pretty much everyone was able to beat everybody else. Leeds rose to the top of that, and it's only really on the back of a Castleford side that was utterly dominant and unexpectedly so that they even finished second. I think in another year, with another set of teams, they might have even been in with a shout of finishing top of the pile.
I agree.
They went about it very quietly in their own sense, and I think that's partly because of how poor they'd been the previous season. I think within themselves as a group, not just a club of players, but the Leeds Rhinos as an organisation kind of went within themselves and did a lot of soul searching, and we all did that thing where you talk about, is it going to be a transitional year for Leeds Rhinos? Are there going to be some of the younger players coming in, are older players a bit past their prime now? And as they did 2 seasons ago, they went on to prove that actually you can't really have a transitional year in Super League. And the older guys that we thought might be on the way out stepped up and really led the side. And then some of the younger players within that organisation, not all of them pan out, that's just the way it goes, but some of the younger players that came in really shone for Leeds Rhinos, like young Jack Walker. Sutcliffe has developed as a player. Jordan Lilly spent some time at Bradford Bulls, but when he came back into the squad, he showed what he's going to offer them in terms of leadership around the park, particularly with his kicking game. And then around that, the senior pros have obviously really, really stepped up and led that side from the front. Guys with wealths of experience like Jamie Jones-Buchanan, Danny Maguire, even like guys like Ryan Hall out on the wings have this muscle memory, and I think they all kind of look within themselves and knew that the season prior to this was unacceptable, and they went on and they used that muscle memory to build through the year and peak at the right time. And that's the experience that they had that got them over the line for me, and what made me think that they would beat Castleford in the grand final was that muscle memory and that winning culture, and they got back on track. And I have no reason to think that they won't carry that forward and be an exceptionally competitive side next season as well. And they are deserved champions, in my opinion.
Yeah, no, I mean, I agree. There's not loads that needs to be said about them. Basically, they were second best all year to Cass, very much so, until that last game. One thing I will add in, though, is that they were the only side who didn't lose 2 Super League games in a row all season, which demonstrates that sort of consistency, that bounce back. So not just the bounce back over last season to this, but from one game to the next, that you sort of talk about. In terms of standout stats, we all know that Leeds try and play a quick, off-the-cuff kind of game, and that's backed up by them having more offloads than any other side, with 2 per game more than anyone else on average. And a difference to last year though is that they were in the middle of the pack last year for errors. They made a higher amount than they would want to, let's say. So the loose play worked for them. So they were in the middle of the pack this year for errors, sorry. So the loose play worked for them a lot more than it did last year when they were way down. They also ran from dummy half a lot, over 20 times per game, and only Warrington did it more. They weren't particularly great at making clean breaks, so they still struggled at times to break down teams. They were down the list in terms of attacking kicks per game, so again, they weren't really finding the right end of the field consistently all the time. But they were still able to have the 3rd best tries per game rate, so they were finding ways to score still, which kind of tries that stand out. Ones like Stevie Ward's in the semi-final, where he didn't really shake off the man that was on him necessarily. He didn't break the line. He didn't do anything explosive. He just fought through more than the next person did, sort of thing, and showed that drive and that will, and that's kind of like the Jamie Joneses, the Singletons, those kind of people, like you say, with that bit of memory of doing it in the past too. The first Leeds player that I'd focus on is one of the right calls I made pre-season, picking Matt Parcell as their key man. He made a huge difference at Leeds. No hooker scored more tries. His 17 was 10 more than second best in the hookers. Only Paul McShane had more assists from hooker than Parcell's 16. He also had more total tackle busts, breaks and offloads than any other hooker in the league. His partner in crime for much of the year has been Adam Cuthbertson as well, as we know. Only Alex Walmsley had more total carries than Cuthbertson. He was 3rd in total metres and of course way out in front in offloads with 132, 59 more than the second best. His 13 tries was the best of any middle unit forward, whether he be a proper or loose forward, and his 11 breaks was top 2 for those sorts of players. He was one of only 4 players in the league to have had plus 100 in the positive, negative play differential. So his upturn from a very, very down year last year was massive.
There you go. Okay, well, let's go from champions to the relegated side then, Mark, and take a look at Leigh Centurions.
Yeah, so we kind of both predicted him to retain the places in the league. We thought second and third and first relatively in the qualifiers, but no sort of cup run. They didn't have a cup run, but they finished 4th in the qualifiers and then were downed at home in the £1 million game. Tom, we didn't get any. No momentum was gathered from Leigh fans in their one Super League year, so so it's just what we have to say really. I'll go first with Leigh. That they got off to a pretty decent start. They had 3 wins in the first 6 games, but then after that they had an 8-game losing run. Yeah. After that 8-game losing run, they won only 3 more games from the final 17 before the split in this season. So they were in the worst 4 in most regular season stat counts, which is obvious. That's where they finished up on the league table too. It was hardly surprising where they finished where they did. And the one thing you would have seen a lot of if you were following the Leigh Centurions this season was penalties. Not only did they concede the most penalties in the regular season, but they were also awarded the most penalties in the regular season. You would have seen an average of 18 total penalties per game that they played in during the regular season.
Wow.
One thing we talked a bit about in the preview show for Leigh was about their ability or question marks about their ability to score tries. I talked a lot about the strike rate of the wingers, and I think this was borne out a bit. Like left wing, right, is the highest scoring position in rugby league in terms of tries. That's pretty well generally accepted. Most players are more comfortable passing it that way. Wingers generally get more tries, have a bit more space, that sort of thing. So they had half the average strike rate for that position in terms of tries than the league average. So that's the average in the league, not the best in the league, the average in the league. They had half of that again. So that just shows that the most try-scoring position in the field, they couldn't get enough tries from whatsoever, and it really cost them. I think despite all the slagging off, Matty Dawson actually was the top try-scorer. He managed a 1 in 2 strike rate over the season for himself. He swapped wings during the year. But yeah, they had the fewest positive impact plays and the most negative impact plays in the regular season, ending at minus 404. So they just were poor.
Yeah.
I think they were kind of lucky not to finish 12th in the regular season. It was only that last round when Widnes were kind of like, shit, we need to get people patched up here, that they dropped back, that they rose back to 11th. That's the way I see it. Widnes were bad, but Leigh had a cup final in the middle of the season, and
that was it then.
Yeah, that's my take on it.
Yeah, that was it.
A bit bare because that cup final came at destroying my team's save.
Yeah, and they did, but that's not the story of their season, is it? And to think that that's their cup final, that's what they were aiming for, it would be to do Leigh's fans a massive disservice, because I think they would trade beating Wigan for Super League status every day of the week. They got off to a decent start because they were unpredictable and they were new, and they came in and they were sort of like the noisy new side, the new kids on the block.
Yeah, they started where they nearly got one over on Leeds early goals as well.
They did,
as well as beating Saints.
And they were more organised, but discipline became a massive, massive factor for them. And I also don't think that recruitment there was no stellar addition to that team apart from Glenn Stewart, and Glenn Stewart didn't pan out for them. So there was nothing that came in that thought, this is real high quality recruitment. There was journeyman Super League players or guys at the end of their Super League career that came in, but there was nothing really that kind of made you think this is someone that they can build a franchise around and kind of hang their season on. There was a lot of shared responsibility around at Leigh, and when you start losing games and get into that losing habit, it becomes difficult to break it. And once teams figured out that Leigh were coming out to be ultra aggressive in the pack and started playing around them, they got found out a little bit, and teams were able to quickly figure out that Leigh were very much just plan A. And then when Hock was unavailable and Jamie Acton went towards the back end of the season, 2 of their most important key figureheads were no longer there.
Yeah.
Massively irresponsibly so on Jamie Acton's part, less so on Gaz Hock, who picked up some injuries, but they just didn't kind of have that impetus and that forward platform. They were a reasonable side in the backs, as you've alluded to, but they just didn't have enough quality across the park. And then I think experience in kind of the coaching setup maybe didn't go well for them as well. Neil Jukes is an astute guy, but his experience is predominantly out of the Championship, and maybe that didn't help for them. They tried to temper that by bringing in Kieran Cunningham, but how much of that undermined the authority of the existing structure, I don't know. There was a slight uptick when he came in, but nothing. It was negligible, and at that point it felt like the last throw of the dice.
But it's the
and
same
then the
with
performance in the £1
recruitment.
million game.
It's the same with the recruitment. They recruited people in the middle of the season as well to play in key roles. Like they brought Mortimer in to be a halfback to lead them. And
too late at that point for me.
It's just not a non-starter.
Look, the £1 million game was a microcosm of their season. Got off to a good start, thought that everything was going to be okay, fell apart at the end.
Yeah, I agree.
Really. So that's Leeds and Tunes. On to another team who had a dip towards the back end of the season, the Salford Red Devils, Mark.
Yeah, now I predicted them to have a worse season than they even had. Neither of them reaching the semi-finals where they got to in the Cup, and they finished 7th in the top 8. You had them 8th, so you were around about the right ballpark. 3rd in the qualifiers is where I had them.
Yeah.
So they did much better than I expected, and we've got a very detailed review coming here from the lads at the Devil in the Detail podcast. That's Rob and Paul, and also thrown in there as well is Dave Campbell from the Supporters Trust, who, as well as talking about the season, talks a little bit more about the trust, how that's going in the future, because that's a really interesting development for a Super League side to be sort of moving towards being ran by a supporters trust. So let's hear what those guys have to say.
I'm Rob Parkinson from the Devil in the Detail, Salford Red Devils independent fan podcast, and we're here to talk all about Salford Red Devils season. Joining me, we've got Paul Whiteside from the Devil in the Detail. Right, Paul?
Hey Rob, you okay mate?
So, on the field, Salford Red Devils played some really good rugby this season, didn't they?
They certainly did, Rob. They certainly did. We had some top wins, some good away wins, and some really exciting rugby, Rob.
Yeah, and obviously got to the Challenge Cup semi-final as well. What an occasion that was.
Yeah, it certainly was. It was a great run really in the cup. We had some good days, didn't we? Against Toronto in the home game, Hull Kingston Rovers, where we came back and won. And obviously the storming win over Wakefield, and a great day for the Challenge Cup semi-final. It was a shame how it finished in the end, but I thought we pushed Wigan all the way. It was 14-12 up at half time, and with a real 40 minutes away from Wembley, but Wigan sort of ground us down in the end. But I think we saw there we had a team to be proud of, and a team that will come again in 2018.
Who was your standout players for the season, Paul?
I think there's been quite a few really, Rob. I think Ben Murdoch-Masilla in the first half of the season, when he scored, especially against Castleford when he got them 2 tries, I thought he was outstanding. He sort of faded away towards the end of the season a bit, but he still scooped all the awards. I thought he did really well. I think Mark Flanagan, up until he got injured, and Leigh Mossop were good, were going really well. Michael Dobson, I thought, was outstanding as well all season. He really unfortunately got that thumb injury and couldn't play in the games towards the end of the season and not get his farewell as he'd like to have done really. But I thought Dobson and Louis' partnership at half-back was tremendous at times. Niall Evans as well showed us what he could do, and I thought the centre Chris Wellham came in and did a good job for us in the centres as well. I probably missed a few players out there as well. Chris Bryan as well, as a young player coming in from League One, jumping up 2 divisions, I thought was excellent really. He's got a really big future with the club.
Yeah, also joining us, we've got Dave Campbell from the Salford Red Devils Supporters Trust. Right, Dave?
Hi guys, you okay?
Yeah, off the field, bit of a mixed bag for Salford.
Yeah, definitely a season of 2 halves. I totally agree with everything Paul's just said about the rugby. We've been really blessed with some excellent, probably the best rugby we've seen in a very long time for Salford Red Devils. Ben Murdoch-Masilla was definitely my pick of the season, and it was great to see some new Devils making a big impact, like Chris Bryan, for example. Off the pitch, when the club was doing really well in the first half of the season, a really good vibe, but unfortunately we hit a bit of a patch mid-season, and things tailed off a bit, and unfortunately the owner was on social media concerned about attendances, and unfortunately sort of finished the season on a bit of a negative vibe, really, when really we should have been celebrating the best season we've had in a very, very long time.
Yeah, obviously since the season's finished, Dave, Salford Red Devils, they've talked about a change of ownership. Marlon Cooper's managed to